Redondo Beach Planning Commission on Thursday, October 15th, 2020. This virtual meeting is held pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, issued by Governor Newsom on March 17th, 2020. We will begin with calling to order, and we have some new and returning commissioners that need an oath of office.
Okay, I'm Eleanor Manzano, City Clerk, and if I can have the appointed Commissioner Godek and Commissioner Elder and Commissioner Topero, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Gwen Elder,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the
duties upon
upon
which I'm about to enter.
which I'm about to enter.
Okay, congratulations. And I just wanted to let you know that we will be mailing your certificate, and then there'll be a copy also. And then if you can, we'll give you a self-addressed envelope, and then you just mail it back to me. So we'll get that out tomorrow. So that's it for my part. So I'm going to go ahead and leave. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
With that, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Godek,
Here.
Commissioner Hensley,
Here.
Commissioner Ung,
Here.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Topero,
Here.
and Chair Elder.
Here. And I noticed there's a new name in that list. We have a new commissioner joining us tonight. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, we'd love to get to know you.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Godek. I am a resident of the South Bay since 1998. I bounced around between Hermosa, Manhattan, and Redondo Beach until 2011 when I settled into Redondo. I have been working for the most part of the last 20 years for the Los Angeles Unified School District in their Office of Environmental Health and Safety. I'm their CEQA advisor, CEQA being the California Environmental Quality Act. And I finally decided to get into local politics instead of into Los Angeles. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm thrilled, and I'm looking very much forward to working with all of you.
Excellent. Well, we are happy to have you aboard and look forward to seeing what you can do.
I'm still getting to know all your documents. There are a lot of documents you guys have on your website.
Yeah, sorry about that. It gets less confusing over time. If you can figure out CEQA, though, you'll do. You'll be great with this.
Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Hensley, would you like to lead us in the salute to the flag?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hensley. And that brings us to the order of the agenda, but I believe we have a change to the agenda. Staff would like.
Yes, Chairman, this is Director Forbes. We have received the email that was forwarded to you from the owners at 719 Elvira Avenue, and they are rescinding their appeal. So that item A1 is pulled from the agenda.
Is that J1? Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda minus item J1?
So moved by Commissioner Stretzenberg.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Stretzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Topero to approve the order of the agenda minus item J1. I'll begin our first roll call vote tonight. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero,
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Stretzenberg,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. That brings us to our blue folder items. We do have blue folder items tonight, and these are items that are additional backup material to administrative reports and or public comments received after printing and distribution of the agenda packet for receive and file. Is there a motion to receive and file our blue folder items?
So moved by Commissioner Stretzenberg.
Second.
I have a motion again by Commissioner Stretzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Topero to receive and file the blue folder items. Roll call vote again. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero,
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
and Commissioner Stretzenberg.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Those have now been received and filed. Brings us to our consent calendar. These are business items except those formally noticed for public hearing or those pulled for discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. Commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. The chair will call on anyone wishing to address the commission on any consent calendar items on the agenda which has not been pulled by the commission for discussion. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once, and comments will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. Do we have any member of the public or e-comments on any consent calendar items?
No, you do not.
Excellent. Then is there a motion to approve items F1 through F3 on the consent calendar?
Chair Elder, I'd like to pull F3, please.
Okay. Anyone else want to pull anything? Is there a motion to approve items F1 and F2 on the consent calendar?
Motion to approve F1 and F2
I'll
on the
second.
consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ung. I think Commissioner Topero seconded it before Commissioner Stretzenberg to approve items F1 and F2 for the consent calendar. Roll call again. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero, sorry, I couldn't.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Stretzenberg,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. So this brings us to excluded consent calendar items. This is F3, receive and file planning commission referrals to staff update. And Commissioner Stretzenberg, I believe you wanted to speak.
Yeah, I was trying to pull it back up, but I was referring to the item that shows completed as far as the guidance concerning commissioners being able to speak to each other prior to a meeting. That this issue came up last July, I believe it was. And it says that city council provided direction. Is that going to be provided to us in some kind of format? Because it's not really completed until we have it.
I'll coordinate with planning analyst Portalisi and see what we can, if it's something where it's in the minutes of the council meeting, or if it's otherwise something that we can get from the city attorney's office. So we'll revise that unless we can get something to you before the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Director Forbes. And can you
Sure.
give a brief synopsis of what that guidance was?
I believe, because we were, the city attorney was discussing it and mentioned that, the Brown Act, you can speak to one other commissioner. It was advice that was provided from the outside counsel on that project. So, the contract attorney on that, and was not something that the city attorney agreed with. The city attorney said that you can have that communication with one other commissioner. You have to do provide that information, the ex parte information, but that you could have a communication with one other commissioner.
So basically, the city attorney's guidance on that was what we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a little bit of difficulty with that because the planning commission meetings that have been approved for that evening state that it was the city attorney that told us we could not do that.
It was the outside counsel. It was what I'm saying is the city attorney, the elected official city attorney.
And I understand that, but the
Council
meeting minutes, which are the official record, do state that it was the city attorney that said we could not do that.
Well, you know,
We have the city attorney doing both.
it's the city attorneys, it's, you know, it's an extension of them with the contract attorney. What I'm saying is that the city attorney corrected that information, said that the consultant attorney was, he did not agree with that. And it's their contract. So it's truly like an extension of their staff, the attorney that we had on that project.
Okay, so both are correct then.
Yes.
Okay, very good. With that, I will make a motion to approve item F3, unless there's anyone else.
I believe Commissioner Hensley, you have a hand raised. Did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, just two comments. The first one was, Director Forbes, I want to confirm, you said that the planning commissioners are allowed to speak to one other commissioner, but on a body of 7, if they didn't speak to anyone else, couldn't more than 3 speak to each other, which is less than a majority?
Like I said, I'll bring back the specific information that this,
Okay.
you know, I'm sorry, I am thinking more in terms of what is allowed at the city council level. Let me get the information specifically as what the city attorney himself provided.
Okay, no problem.
I'd like to give a brief synopsis because we have discussed that before. Basically, Commissioner Hensley, what it comes down to is that 4 commissioners of the Planning Commission is a quorum. Therefore, 2 would not be a majority of that quorum, but 3 would. So if any one planning commissioner spoke to 2 or 3, basically 3 got together, that would be an issue with the Brown Act, because there has been times when we have had just 4 commissioners at a planning commission, and that does qualify as a quorum. And in that case, if 3 had spoken prior, it would be a Brown Act violation. So normally it's not, but it can be, so we have to respect that can be situation.
Okay.
It has
understood. So I'll wait for the clarification, and that's fine. And the second comment I was going to make was just that there's some items on there that were closed, in previous months. So I think on the referrals to staff update, if something is closed and accepted at the planning commission, then we can remove that from the referrals matrix. So
Okay.
it's my opinion. Thank you very much.
There's a motion on the floor.
The motion to approve item F3, receive and file planning commission referrals to staff update. Is there a
Second.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion by
Commissioner Ung.
Commissioner Stretzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Ung to approve item F3. Roll call. Oh, gotta get back to my notes. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero, Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Stretzenberg,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. This brings us now to public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. And I believe we do have members of the public wishing to speak. Do we have written requests, or what order do you want to take those in?
I have no written request. So we do have one person here to speak on non-agenda items. So it'll be Lisa. So if you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, my name is Lisa Agabian. Thank you for allowing me to address you this evening. I believe this commission is an evolution of the Environmental and Public Utilities Commission, a body I was proud to serve on for 4 years in the 1990s. My family lives in North Redondo Beach on a 2-on-a lot. Our backyard backs up to the yard of our neighbor, also on a 2-on-a lot. We are surrounded by 8 townhomes. Those of us who are fortunate enough to have yards have a very small backyard area. The neighbor who backs up to our yard has undertaken an extensive yard construction project that has been going on for nearly 6 months. Part of the project is a large fireplace structure of approximately 12 feet high by 7 feet wide with an integrated TV set and was built right at the fence line with no setback. This structure is less than 15 feet from our family room. We were told by the planning department it is categorized as an auxiliary structure and it conceptually meets all of the zoning requirements. What used to be there were large trees and green space mandated by the city. Now that has been replaced with a large concrete cinder block structure. I am requesting that the Planning Commission review the laws regarding auxiliary structures on R2 and R3 lots and consider changing them to include setback requirements and more appropriate size limitations. If all of our neighbors were to build these enormous structures right at the fence line, it would be very unattractive and take away open space in our already dense neighborhood. The proximity of the structure is also likely to result in violations of the noise ordinance whenever used. As an aside, this entire construction project was initially undertaken without approved plans or permits. The homeowners were issued multiple stop work orders, which they ignored. There should be some sort of progressive penalty schedule levied against homeowners who blatantly defy city orders, especially when told multiple times to follow the construction permit process. Additionally, much of the construction was completed before plans were submitted or approved, so we are concerned that due to the pandemic, the regulations may have been interpreted to accommodate what was already built. Thank you for consideration of this matter.
Great, thank you for your
I
comment.
wonder if anyone has any questions.
Unfortunately, can't interact for a non-agenda item.
I
But
understand.
if any commissioners want to make a referral to staff at the end for any of those discussion topics, that's something that could be brought back in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Strutzenberg, I see you have a hand up.
Yes, Chair, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe we did a roll call. I think we went straight from the swearing in into the rest of things. And because of the swearing in, it was often, I don't recall doing a roll call.
We did roll call. Can staff correct me on that?
We did.
Okay, I don't remember responding to that, so maybe I did.
Sorry, I do so many roll call votes these days. It's hard to keep track of what's
I remember doing votes, but not a roll call. Okay.
I did, yeah.
All right, thank you. My apologies.
No, please keep me honest, because definitely I do make those mistakes.
Yeah, Chair, I do recall because that's when you allowed the new commissioner to introduce herself once that roll call was done.
Thank you.
Then who do we have absent tonight?
We are missing a commissioner right now.
We have a
There's
vacancy.
only 6 of us.
Just a vacancy. All right.
Yeah, Commissioner Glad has not been replaced.
Okay,
Commissioner
so the clarification on that, so Commissioner Godek has replaced
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. Okay, that wasn't clear before. Thank you.
I would like to make a recommendation to staff for this issue that Lisa Agabian has brought up.
So we probably want to hold on until item N for that before we make that recommendation, but hold on to that thought. And that is why I brought that up, because I think some of us might be interested in that. Sorry, Commissioner Hensley, though I saw a hand up. Did you have anything on the public comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the speaker. It was a really excellent use of non-agenda items. So it was very succinct and understandable. And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to share that with us. And at the end of the evening, we can make referrals. And also tonight we are talking about open space. So if you're available, you may be able to comment on that as well as it relates to open space in your particular issue. So thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, great feedback, because again, as Commissioner Hensley just said, we will be talking somewhat about this later on. And then so I have a feeling someone will make a referral to staff as well. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak on non-agenda items? Nope.
No, there are not.
Okay. This brings us to ex parte communications. We don't. Anyone has, so this section is intended to allow all officials the opportunity to reveal any disclosure or ex parte communication about the following public hearings. We don't actually have a public hearing tonight, though, so do we even need this?
No, there's no public hearing.
Perfect. That keeps things simple. I don't have to do the audience oath or anything. Items continued from previous agendas. I don't see anything listed there. Takes us to items for discussion prior to action. This is item L1, discussion and presentation regarding the city's policies related to open space and outdoor living space. And I believe we have the staff presentation.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Planning Manager Sean Scully. He'll present, what the city's policies and regulations are, and then open it up for discussion. This was a referral item from the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you very much, Director Forbes. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a fairly brief presentation. It mimics or mirrors the report that was provided to you. And we'll just walk through the existing regulations and some of what we know in terms of intention and other, let's say, tangents to the requirements. Okay, so let me get to the top here. Excuse me. Okay, so tonight's presentation, outdoor living space and also public open space. This is a great introduction with our new commissioner tonight to kind of get into some of the details of our zoning regulations, and this was the one we'll walk through tonight. This was actually built. This presentation tonight is very similar, nearly identical to what was presented back in June 21st, 2018. I didn't even update that part. But we're bringing it back at the request of Commissioner Topero, and I think a lot of you had some interest in this. So outdoor living space, residential development standards, it's a zoning requirement. The purpose and intent is to go beyond the required setbacks, achieve a higher quality and livability in our residential neighborhoods, designed for local climate and environmental conditions. And it's really a kind of a unique zoning development standard. Most jurisdictions have, height, setback, density, very standard zoning development standards for residential development in particular. And the city of Redondo Beach, has this added extra requirement for outdoor living space. So here's the kind of the highline summary. Each residential zoning category has a requirement for a certain amount of square footage of outdoor living space. For R1 zones and any residential zone with a single family residence, it's required to have an 800 square foot minimum. The only R1 zone that doesn't require 800 square feet is the R1A, our very small narrow lots. And that's the requirement for outdoor living space in that zoning designation is 400 square feet. For condominium and multifamily development on R2, R3, and RMD, and RH1 through RH3, those have different standards. The R2 zoning designation has a requirement for 450 square feet for condominium development and 400 square feet for multifamily development, apartment development. R3 and RMD, the scale starts to slide down and have less of a requirement. It's 350 square feet for condominium and the same for multifamily. And then our highest density designation, RH1 through RH3, has a requirement for 200 square feet for condominium and for multifamily. So the calculations of outdoor living space, they depend on the location and the dimensions of the space. Essentially, depending on the location and its dimensions, there's various incentives that are provided. So we're looking for larger spaces that have larger dimensions. And we're also looking to locate those spaces outside the common areas within the adjacent residence. So like off the kitchen or dining room or living room or other similar communal areas. you're able to get all the bonuses afforded in the standards. So the design of these areas, and it's kind of interesting. I remember talking to the prior community development director, and my question to him when I first arrived was, how did they come up with these minimums? And these bullet points under each one of these minimums were essentially just trying to fit for the minimum space, 5 feet by 10 feet, chairs and a side table. And then the areas were, as the areas grew, it was based on, a couple of lounge chairs and a small table. And then the 10 by 15, kind of a dining table and chairs and room for a little bit of service and activities. So, and again, you'll notice too, for each one of these minimum dimensioned areas, the larger that area, the larger the percent bonus that you can obtain. Roof decks, interestingly enough, they have a very large minimum dimension requirement to even be calculated towards your outdoor living space requirement. However, even if you do qualify some of your roof deck, you only get 15% towards your outdoor living space. So what we wanted to do as well tonight was just throw a couple of examples that show and that illustrate to the commission and what these are generally looking like in the more typical developments that we're processing regularly, and that make up a lot of the R2 and R3 neighborhoods in the city. So this is an example of an R3 lot, about 7,500 square feet. And this is the more typical layout, 3 units attached. And you'll notice that unit C in the rear, if you can see the cursor, that definitely has the lion's share of the outdoor living space. Unit C, outdoor living space, 603 square feet, and it's calculated, 100%. That's the actual ground floor area. As you go towards the street, the attached units really don't have any options, and are providing that outdoor living space by usually a deck or balcony that's located off the second floor, living room, dining room, great room area. And this just kind of demonstrates that these attached units do not, they do qualify, they do meet the requirements, but the actual space itself isn't very large, certainly in comparison to the rear unit C. So we just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how these developments that we see regularly are meeting this requirement.
And again, if I can interject.
Yeah, absolutely.
These spaces can be paved.
These are, what you're seeing, you mean on this exhibit here?
Right.
Yeah, these are balconies. They're just green. They're not grass.
Right. So I just want to make a point.
Yeah, they can be paved.
What we see, which is green, is technically not really green. It's covered dirt with either wood or cement or God knows what.
And they can be decks and patios and balconies.
Right. So I just want to make that point because
Sure.
when we think of outdoor space and this is just more house without connection to the land, to the dirt. No plants is the point. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
That's correct. So here's another example. It's another R3 lot, smaller, that only allows for 2 units. And again, we have a unit up by the street. It's providing its outdoor living space by another deck within the unit or adjacent to the unit, attached to the unit, and accessed by a communal area. It's receiving, it's actual 200 square feet, and it gets the 200% bonus, and it's calculated at 414 square feet. The rear unit, again, it's got the rear yard. It meets the requirement on ground floor as yard space. So that rear unit really gets the lion's share, if you will, of what we would normally associate a yard and outdoor living space with. So that's all there is, that in the presentation with respect to outdoor living space for residential uses. And we can certainly, the slides will be up, but I wanted to quickly run through the public open space requirements on private development. That is another somewhat unique Redondo Beach requirement that is essentially applied to the mixed use developments and in the coastal commercial zones that were first enacted back in 2010. And these are spaces that are required 10% of constructed square footage and a FAR bonus for 20%. So these areas here these are designed to create these, and there's some great pictures coming up that provide really good examples of what it is, the public open space requirement is. And in the later enacted for the mixed use zones in particular was this 10% of constructed square footage requirement as well. And we have those on all our most recent developments for mixed use, the Legato project, the Sea Breeze project, One South, it's also referred to. And these projects provide a fair amount of these public plazas and open space areas. So they must be improved to allow passive or active use. The Galleria, of course, has a large area as well. So what is this high quality public open space? It's an area open to the public, not fenced or gated, with a minimum 10-foot dimension, and that does not include parking areas or landscape within parking areas. So these are these additional areas for public access in these commercial zones and mixed use zones that will provide additional amenities, and we'll show some examples of that. And these are the types of public open space: paseos, plazas, squares, little parks, pools, water features, fountains, events and activity areas, green belts and buffers. So again, here's the kind of the definition: public access protected by deed restriction for public open space, maintenance responsibility of the private development, no initial or ongoing cost to the city, and the requirement is in addition to Quimby Park acquisition fees. So here's just wanted to show some examples of a variety of public open spaces. Really just mostly passive, but in some cases, as you can see down in the lower right, you got a little, active open space areas. It really just help create that sense of place. And I'm sure the commission will recall, as we went through recently the Artesia Aviation Corridor Area Plan, there's a real push in that. There's a lot of recommendations in that plan to incentivize the creation of these passive and sometimes active, but probably mostly passive gathering spaces in the corridor. So here's just a lot more examples of these types of areas that are kind of create that area to gather and congregate and utilize, sometimes more actively than others. So just a lot of different examples. And hopefully we'll, through the development of the ACAP, that's going back, by the way, just a quick tangent. It's going back to the council on December 8th, I believe. So at this point, we just want to open it up. I'll stop sharing and I can bring up that information, if anybody wants to revisit it. But we just like to open it up for the Planning Commission to discuss, and we're available to answer questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation. And I think I'd speak for all of us when I'd say I'd love to see some photos of Redondo Beach up in that slideshow. So let's figure out how to get us there. Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I had a question for staff. So in the staff report, there were the current municipal code regulations. Can you just walk me through the process of, whatever we as a commission can decide? How do we, what do we do if we want to make a change? Do we just make some edits that we can agree on and then we send it to city council and they have to adopt it? Or do we have to pass an ordinance to kind of recommend something? Or can you just kind of walk me through that process and how that would work?
You would want to make that recommendation to city council. We as staff are not going to put together an ordinance and propose that unless that comes from city council. But if you do have, suggestions of what you want to forward on, we can capture your information, what things you want to see changed and forward that. You can make a motion that city council consider amending the code to do X, Y, Z. So, and then we'll take that to the city council for them to consider, and then they can determine if they want to move forward with that and direct staff at that point.
Okay, so let me just confirm then. Well, we as a commission can't make any change or even any kind of, I guess we can't make any change. We can only make a request to city council to adopt some change. Do I understand that right?
Right.
Okay. Okay, that was the first question I wanted to get out of the way as we start our discussion. So thank you very much.
And just maybe a little point of clarification. We would ask that the commission reach consensus on any of these amendments that may.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes, thank you. One of the things I remember from the Galleria project was that there were a lot of, call them long, skinny sidewalk places along buildings that they were usable, but they weren't anything functionally usable. You weren't going to have a picnic along a long sidewalk or something. And yet those areas count towards the open space. Is that correct for staff?
Yes, that is correct. As long as they have that 10-foot minimum dimension.
Okay, so if we have a 10-foot corridor running along the side of a parking garage or something between the street and the parking garage, that's going to add up towards their total allowance or allocation for open space. And I remember there was a lot of public comment on that with the Galleria that seemed ridiculous that we would include, yes, it's open space, but it seems really useless as truly being, I wouldn't call it high quality open space at all, and that those words run on your slides. But I would look for us to try and delineate a way between truly useful open space and just qualified open space, such as a long sidewalk area along a parking garage or a stretch of building that, again, counts towards that number, and it can add up very quickly if you got long runs of it. And what it ends up doing is diminishes the true open space that ends up being have to be allocated among the real part of the development. So if you needed, let's say, 1,000 square feet of open space for something, and 400 of it came from a 10-foot by 40-foot sidewalk along a building, you'd be left with 600 rather than, I think truly the intent of it was to have some of the 1,000 rather than what's left over. So I didn't see any of that in your presentation slides, that a qualified open space would be a long, skinny, blank sidewalk. It'd be fair to show us what really does qualify. The pretty pictures are great. Yes, we'd all like to see that, but the reality is very different from what was presented. And I think that's what we really need to see, is the reality.
Yeah, and this is actually why I wanted to bring this particular topic to the commission, because this how we're defining it and everything, I think, is not really shooting what the actual purpose of that open space. And in addition, there's no requirement for green space, right? For planted area. So an open space essentially can just be cemented over. You can throw a pool in there, and then, okay, your pool counts as your, and that's a vat of chlorine or a vat of artificial salt water, which is not very natural. So we're becoming a very unnatural city, if you will, because I'm seeing it everywhere next door. The whole yard was cemented over with a pool, and it's all concrete, and that's that. So when we use the word open space, as Commissioner Struttenberg said, it's not truly usable space in the way that we'd like to see it in, like, the photos that you showed, of which none were of Redondo Beach. But, we'd like to strive more towards that. So I was hoping that with you bringing this to the agenda, we could maybe see what it is that we could tweak to at least start to put a dent in this before the whole city is just concreted to death. I know somebody who took their backyard, it's one of these big FQMs, freaking Queen Marys, which are these, big, it's an R1. And they've built a huge mini house, dollhouse, 2-story dollhouse in the back. So even further reducing, quote, the open space. And I'm sure that flew under the radar. So people have their open space, and then they cement it in or patio it in, and then you have no nature left. And this is a really, I think, a very big concern that we need to try to see what we can do. People can xeriscape somewhere where the water can actually filter back down into the water table. Right now, everything, people do those goofy, squares with the little fake grass in between. And, oh, yeah, the water can drown through there. But essentially, everything is, the earth is dying underneath us, just to put it bluntly. So I don't know where we can start to even think about how to, when we say open space, and another big issue that I have is with these, 5x10 porches you see on the big FQMs. Nobody ever sits in front of those, on those porches. You can barely put a little cafe table with 2 tiny little cafe chairs, but people don't even use them to put plants on them. So I don't know if that's really a true use of open space. It's just being given away so that they can max out their, the house even more. It's quite disconcerting. So anyway, those are my 2 cents to kind of stimulate the conversation on this topic.
Yeah, I think that's what our role is tonight, is to make recommendations of things we think would improve this for City Council to later discuss. But sorry, Commissioner Strutzenberg, were you done? Okay, sorry. Commissioner.
Thank you. And thank you, Sean, for that presentation. I was kind of curious what the rationale. I understand why and how one qualifies for the bonus, but 200%. I was just wondering the rationale on, why it would actually be, an equivalent of half the allocated square footage, especially since most of that stuff is, going to be a, piece of concrete. I was just wondering if you had any insight.
I'm not sure of the discussions and maybe intentions that originally occurred shaped this ordinance or these standards. Other than just a little bit I received from the prior director, certainly it was in response to again having something. Was in response to the typical requirements that are in zoning ordinances for residential, where you just meet setbacks, essentially. It's setbacks only. And as we know, with land values and density locations or allowances that we have, the multi-unit attached projects were, I think, being developed, and there wasn't even the minimal that we have that we're getting from these standards. So I think they just looked at, hey, let's get some minimums based on those let's say ideas or those concepts that Aaron, the prior director, Aaron Jones had discussed with me, just fitting some basic, furniture, outdoors, for these units, and then, dimensioning those basic minimums and making that a requirement. That's about all I know. And it's certainly, since I've been here and been working with the Planning Commission, I've seen and heard the commission off and on express, concerns about it being too little. And so, this is, I'll be curious to see what all the commissioners think, and we'll go from there. But yeah, they're interestingly, they appear to be somewhat minimal, but I can tell you from my experience, and I've been a planner in many jurisdictions across the state, they're very unique to even have them.
Is that because when in other cities, if they just merely meet the setback requirements, they'll have that open space? I guess I don't understand how other cities can not just have setback requirements, and they don't seem as crammed as we are here.
Yeah,
we have setbacks and open space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the unique, and it's I've got RENA on my mind right now, which makes me think about a lot of the arguments that we're presenting to SCAG about this. And I think what makes Redondo kind of unique and why we might have these standards and other jurisdictions don't is because a lot of our standard size R1 lots aren't zoned R1. They're zoned R2 and R3. So you're getting, other jurisdictions, a lot of our neighbors, they're same size lots, 75% of their lots that are residentially zoned are R1 and they're, so they have plenty of yards and plenty of open space just by meeting the setbacks. A lot of our same size lots had sometime way back when have been changed from R1 to R2 and R3, and then are developed with the multiple units, and they're usually attached. And we've, over time it was realized there's no, open space on these lots. So this standard, I think, was created to kind of, wrestle back some of that open space, even though it's minimal.
Yeah, because I can see where having, these balconies and patios in a communal area should be worth more than if you just have it, adjacent to a master bedroom. But it seems like instead of rewarding the communal area, we should decrement, the negative behavior, but have a less than 100% for the, well, let me figure out how I can get away, with the least amount of open space.
And they actually do. It might not have been clear in the presentation, but if you have your space out, let's say it's off a private bedroom, you only get 50% credit for it.
Okay.
So we do try to disincentivize, that behavior.
Okay. And my last question is, do we make any distinctions between non-permeable open space and permeable / semi-permeable space? It would seem that if you either incentivize, the permeable open space, or decrement, the hardscaping, that might incentivize more positive behaviors in trying to maximize, whatever they want. They're going to have to. By having more open space or permeable open space, they don't need to allocate quite as much. But if they're going to make it all hardscape, then they're going to have to, provide a little bit more. I was just wondering if we either have a distinction between permeable and non-permeable, and your thoughts on whether that would be something that could be incorporated.
I'll speak to that, just because I've been worked in other parts of the country where there's a lot more rainfall. So that permeable versus non-permeable is a bigger issue, because it's dealing with locations that may have a combined sanitary and storm sewer. So you don't want all the water from a giant rain event to flood your sewer system and have to be treated. So that's a lot of what I've seen as far as why that's required. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to see green space. But the concern or thought to think, something to consider is that if you say it's got to be permeable, they could do permeable pavement. It still is going to give you the aesthetic of being paved. The water can go through that and get down into the ground and the groundwater, but it's not going to change the aesthetic. So if it's an aesthetic greening, then I think you need to do something a little bit more than just saying permeable.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, that was it for me. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Ung. And I'd like to note, I saw a lot of heads nodding at the discussion topic of the bonuses we gave, which is something I strongly agree with, because a 200% bonus for 10 by 15, it'd be, instead of that, it's you get 100% for 10 by 15, and anything less than that gets less than 100%. So, I don't know what that threshold is, but I do see some heads nodding at that one. That's something I'd certainly like to pursue, because to me, 5 by 10 is just someplace you store junk. It's not outdoor living space. So, looking at how we bonus that, I think makes more sense. And I also like the idea of permeable versus non-permeable. I think groundwater replenishment is really important, particularly in the drought-stricken state we're in. And so even if it is permeable pavement, that's better than non-permeable pavement. Obviously, green space would be ideal. So I don't know if staff has any ideas or suggestions on things for that. The concern I have is, yes, when they build it, it's open green space, and then a month later they pave over it anyway, and we never know about it. So I don't know if staff has any thoughts on that. But
yeah, the drought stricken is, I think, a whole bigger topic, because that could go into your groundwater, but that's not to be usable. It's not something that it's now going into a well system that we're going to be pulling up from. So I think that's in general, it's a great idea to be able to do that, but I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the systems here to know if that's just going to eventually just get down to, releasing it to the ocean, or if it's something that actually will get recaptured and utilized. So I think there need to be a little bit more research on that usability of it. So just something to think about. But it's better than it running into a storm drain that immediately goes down to the ocean.
Yeah, I think MWD does operate some local wells. I'd have to check on that. But I also know near the ocean, at least in Hermosa, they have water injection to prevent saltwater intrusion. So even if it's not something we're directly benefiting from, we're having to pump in less water to prevent saltwater invasion. So, but yeah, like you said, worth investigating potentially if the commission decides. Sorry, Commissioner Tupper, I see your hand. You'll be after Commissioner Hensley. Sorry.
Thank you, Sherilyn. I just wanted to share my thoughts of what I've heard so far. So, to Commissioner Schutzenberg's point about the public open space for some of the bigger projects, I agree that, any paved area over 10 feet wide shouldn't count as open space for public projects. So I would be interested in changing that somehow to make it more look like the pictures we saw tonight when we say open space requirement. And also to Commissioner Tupper's point, I can't stand the porches and balconies that count as open space on some of our projects. Mostly because as a family with young kids, it's just not a usable space when you can't, with young kids. So it really limits who that is even usable for. So, and when I looked at the ordinance, when I read it, it talks about, balconies count and porches and this kind of thing. I think for the high density condo, I think it makes perfect sense. You can't really get anything else besides a porch or a balcony. And then whatever public area, is required. But for R1 and R2s and R1As, I think that allowing them to meet their requirements through porches and balconies, I think is not the way. I think especially for R1, those should be met by on-floor, green space, as a part of the setbacks. So I'd be interested to hear other comments. But in my mind, when I look at the municipal code, I'm kind of thinking that like R1, R2, and even R3s, balconies would not meet open space or, greatly reduced. So you would have to do that in addition to an actual yard. And then for condos, the current language is probably pretty good. Is maybe some small tweaks to the percentages, but so anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on the what I see when I read through it. So that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would agree with that sentiment and with that, Commissioner Tupper.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of this, and especially with the groundwater. I think as much water that we can divert back into the ground rather than into the ocean is very beneficial for us. So because it's the intrusion of the salt water into the groundwater is because there's nothing else there. So the more that we can divert back into the groundwater, the better, which is another good motivation to do the permeable space as part of this whole evaluation that we're doing.
Thank you. And one thing I'd point out too on open space, other cities define things differently and have different requirements. But if you look at someplace like Santa Barbara, which I always think is a model of having open green space in their residential areas, their code for R1, coastal, and even inland is 50% of the net area has to be open space. For Torrance, I think for R1, it's a third of the total open space, total of the lot area has to be open space. So we can be, other cities are more aggressive, but their definitions are different than ours too. Something to look at. Commissioner Strutzenberg, I see your hand up, but just one question for you on that topic of commercial open space. So you're talking about those 10-foot wide areas like the Galleria proposed, and they call that a linear park, I think is how they define that. And in concept, I actually kind of like some of that if they do it right, where it's an area to run or something like that. But I agree, you shouldn't just be able to use a buffer as your open space requirement and call it a day. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on what you might better define that as, so it's not just taking wasted space and defining it as open space and making it useful and active.
Yeah, I'd have to look more into the code on that and figure out. I think we're at the point we need to dive into the code and look at what possible code recommendations we might take, and then put that together again. As this has been our chance to get it back on the agenda, because I know we've been talking about it a lot of times, but it's down to where we've got to come up with something, because staff is not going to provide it to us, and nor should they. But we've got to come up with the things that in specifics of, and discuss those and provide a recommendation to city council. Is 10%, should we recommend that becomes 15%, and get down to some hard numbers here? Sean, I believe there was something in the slides that caught my eye. Could you possibly bring those back up, and we'll flip through them fairly quick? I'll try to see what it was.
Sure.
Shouldn't take too long. You can flip through them pretty quick.
All right. Can you see that?
Yeah, next one. You can go on down.
Hang on, I've got a little delay. It's on my screen.
It was something about landscaping. Further down.
Yeah, let me move it over to my primary screen. Okay.
Is that it? More further down. You can move it.
Can you see it? Oh,
it's not. We're on the page.
I got to reshare again. I apologize. When I moved it to my other screen, it paused it.
Yeah, and when we do these slides, I know that they're not always put together in time. Is that something that could possibly come to us electronically as a copy of it? We've done that in the past.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times that depends on what we've got time frame wise on if we could get that prepared in advance. If you recall, we were working on the ACAP and ADUs at council last week, so we weren't able to get this to you a little bit earlier.
Okay, come on down, Sean. Further, it wasn't a picture. It was there. So it must be. Wait. First check. Next. Oh, no, wait, back up. That one does not include parking areas or landscape within parking areas. Okay, so you're talking a curved in area to break up a parking area is what you're looking at there.
Right.
And that's always being trampled over by people walking on top of that landscaping.
Well, that's the place where we put our shopping carts. I think that was it. Can you go to the next one? But yeah, I think that was it. It was Lance. It didn't include it. Okay. Yeah, I believe that was it. There was something about the landscaping that caught my eye. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
No problem.
In the bigger picture, I'm looking at the admin report. At the bottom of page 1, ends with front and side setbacks in areas such as driveways and walkways are not considered outdoor living space, but there's a delineation. It seems like open space and outdoor living space kind of get rolled together here, but they are truly separate and separately defined. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I need to read that more carefully then. But overall, I feel like that's where we're at as the commission. We've got to put some meat into this with what we would like to see and discuss that and hash it out amongst ourselves and say, wow, is 200% too much? Is 150% reasonable? Is 100% too little? And, make some real recommendations. So I'll end with that.
Thank you. And I would definitely agree that, we have to come up with what we think is right and then come to some consensus on that. Sorry, I see Commissioner Ung and then Commissioner Topero next. But just to get an idea for that, that we've got plenty of time tonight, obviously, but this could also be something where we did it like we did with ACAP, and we all come up with our recommendations, potentially feed it to staff, and then come back and go through each person's individual recommendations and see if we can come to consensus or not. So I don't know if that's the format we want to take, but just wanted to get that idea out there. With that, I will hand off to Commissioner Ung, followed by Commissioner Topero.
Yeah, I appreciate this discussion on the commercial and mixed use areas and how it's probably more desirable to have a large public area than a whole bunch of disjointed ones that are, minimally, compliant in one dimension. And maybe, as we think about, either the bonus slash decrement on the public spaces, you can give like full value if it's a certain dimension, but as you start to get into the minimum dimensions, they don't count quite as much. I think when you have those formulas, developers are really good about figuring out how to maximize whatever utility they're looking for. So if you, I think it's better not to say give a bonus for doing something. I say have a decrement for doing something haphazardly or suboptimally, and perhaps having the smaller chunks of minimally compliant open space could be decremented vis-a-vis one larger area that covers the same square footage but is more usable because it's all in one, in one piece of land. Just a thought there. That's it.
Personally, I agree with that, but we can figure out how we want to do that next. Commissioner Topero.
I think one of the things right off the bat is just to take out all the bonuses, because I'm calling BS on it. It is what it is, I mean, what are we trying to kid? We're lying to ourselves by giving a bonus to it. So I think the easiest thing to do is right going out of the gate is to take out any of the bonuses and make it real, make it truthful, for what it is. And then, yes, the developers and everybody else, it's when we see it time and time again, it's like squeezing, blood out of a stone, where they want an extra foot here because, they're trying to add more square footage and this and that. And no one's really evaluating the land for being the land and the beauty. So that would be the recommendation that I would voice. And also, I'm thinking maybe we need to look at maybe some of the gem cities of California. I'm thinking like Carmel, Laguna Niguel, Santa Barbara, who knows, maybe some others. And maybe we could have a referral to staff to look at what their codes are and see how we can, maybe they have some codes also for permeability versus non-permeable, green space, planted space, as opposed to other open space, because that's an argument as well. We're suffering plant extinction at a massive scale. And now the good news of this pandemic is, people are taking an interest in planting things and so this would be another way of encouraging people to have some natural beauty on their property rather than a bunch of fake, artificial, made in China chandeliers and imported sofas or whatever the other crap that people buy these days, if you know what I'm saying. So it's also about, kind of looking at how we can align all that so that we are actually in sync with the laws of nature. That's really the bottom line. So
if I may, I just wanted to interject. The one thing that we do want to be cautious of, though, if there is going to be any requirement for plantings, is that we make sure that it deals with that that water efficiency. You know, we just adopted the
Of course.
model water efficiency ordinance. So we want to make sure that it's plants that meet the same goal.
Yeah, I mean, and the issue with the water thing is people flushing their toilet, 20, 30 times a day, brushing their teeth. Most people, when you look at how they brush their teeth, they put the faucet on, and all this high quality clean water that's cost all this money to filter and prepare to come to your house is going directly into the sewer system. Well, you're there brushing and flossing and the water's running. And then, when you're done, you're finally using it. But meanwhile, a couple of gallons has gone down the drain. So when you talk about water efficiency, the problem is not so much with the plants, but with the humans and their use of water, and whether it's use, water in the kitchen, or that's where the water is being used. So, I really want us to look at this approach really in a very large scale in terms of the environment and what we're doing. So yes, in totally respect with the water usage, but in actuality, it's not the plants that are sucking up the water, especially not in a city that we've cemented the bejesus out of already. It's the people flushing their toilets and brushing their teeth and everything else wasteful. So anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, so one thing I would say, I know you talked about getting rid of the bonus system altogether. Alternatively, we could tweak that to encourage things like green space. So if it's a tree planting, for example, there's your bonus for having large outdoor trees or things like that, because we don't really have a tree preservation ordinance that I'm aware of. And so we really don't have an effective way of encouraging people other than that's required if they're taking out a tree to replace it. But we could really much more actively encourage something like that as well by using bonuses differently. So I fully agree that the way we're using bonuses isn't giving us what we want. And just to get, good background for people watching or a new commissioner, this topic comes up a lot for us because invariably projects come forth where they meet all the exact requirements and they've tweaked everything to exactly use those bonuses to get to where they want to get. And so it's hard finding any way to modify or require modifications. And so it's people gaming the system, developers gaming the system, and it's not giving us outdoor living space. It's not giving usable space. And so that's really why this keeps coming back to us, is we want to be able to do that effectively. Speaking of the tree issue, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this topic? We had I see some attendees listed.
Let me see, we don't have anyone new up. Let me check in with the two that are here to see.
Sorry.
Yeah, give me one.
Just realized we still had.
Sorry. So yeah, because Lisa.
Hi there.
Hi. Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
With regard to trees, I just feel as though, especially here in North Redondo Beach, we just live in such a dense area as it is that it's really, really important to preserve trees wherever possible. The neighbors that we have behind us ripped out 3 very large old growth trees that they were mandated to have there, and now they're putting tiny little trees in pots as a replacement, which truly are not a replacement. And so, there's no privacy any longer. And that, I think, is a problem throughout Redondo Beach and North Redondo in particular. The animals don't have a place to live. We've got wonderful animals in our yard that come through, from possums to raccoons to squirrels, birds. They have no place to go anymore. And it's really very sad to see when these things are torn out.
Perfect. No, thank you for that comment. And I think I appreciate you sticking around, because that does tie in perfectly, with the conversation we're having here. Because now this is I guess a question for staff is, do surrounding cities have tree ordinances? And have we looked at implementing a tree ordinance for preservation at all?
Redondo, did you say other cities? Do we have one?
Well, I don't think we have one, but do
No, we
surrounding
don't.
cities have one, or have we looked at
Yeah, I mean, I know Palos Verdes Estates has a pretty strict tree preservation ordinance. A lot of jurisdictions do. We could certainly that's something we can research and
Yeah, so I don't know if that's something that's necessarily part of this conversation or if we can include it,
Right.
but that's something I would certainly be interested in, potentially as a
Mhm.
future discussion item. Because yeah, you do see it all the time, and so preserving them is certainly important, but also incentivizing whatever we can to get people to plant new ones, I think would be fantastic too. And that's where we could use that outdoor living space bonus potentially. But I apologize, I lost track of the order here. I think Commissioner Strutzenberg was next.
Actually, I'm sorry. I believe we do have one more public speaker. Let me check in. Bruce Bernard, did you want to speak on this topic?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Thanks.
All right, Commissioners, thank you. Bruce Bernard, I live at 712 Elvira Avenue, and I'm very familiar with this topic. Some of you on the commission remember that we had 709 Elvira as a building that was 23% larger than anything that had ever been built in the area, and the residents got together and objected to that. On issue for us was neighborhood compatibility, and I would urge you to consider that as something that you can use when a developer maximizes everything. You can still go with neighborhood compatibility to pare that back. That's what we did on Elvira Avenue for 709. I agree with you 100%. That's why I was attending this, that the bonuses actually have the opposite effect. They reduce the amount of space. If you put a 10 by 20 balcony off the back of a 2 on a lot, either one of the units, you can eliminate all of the open space that's required. Instead of 450 square feet, you end up with 50 square feet of open space, and the others is a balcony, and that's what we objected to specifically at 709 Elvira, and we're successful in doing that. If you're going to recommend, and I hope you do, recommend changes in the ordinances, in addition to eliminating the bonuses, I would recommend that you decrease the allowable footprint, because otherwise you're not going to achieve everything that you've described here tonight. And I would emphasize the neighborhood compatibility, because while the documents on the Redondo Beach website show pictures of things you shouldn't do when you develop, such as put a very large building next to a smaller beach cottage. In fact, that goes on all the time because neighborhood compatibility is not something that is emphasized enough, and the owners on either side of the smaller places, thank you, Lena, the owners of the smaller places don't take the time to object. In the case of Elvira Avenue, we had 55 out of 59 parcel holders object to it, and the other 4 would have, but we just couldn't reach them in time. I'd love to talk about this more. If you have any questions for me or you'd like additional comments, I have studied every single R2 that's been built from 2016 through 2018. And I have quite a bit of information that I could share with you, but not tonight, obviously. So thank you for listening, and I hope you do suggest that you suggest ordinance changes. They are badly needed.
There's an opening on the planning commission.
Yes, Chantal, thank you. I've considered that. My wife might object to me taking on yet another project, but I'll talk to her about it if it's something that you consider. I'd love to do it.
Thank you. And thank you for hanging in there and for your feedback. And also as well, thank you for all the feedback you gave in the past. It was immensely helpful having that level of community feedback and engagement. So you're doing great. Keep it up.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Hensley.
Thank you, Charles. Commissioner Strutzenberg, were you before me or was I next?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to talk about the process here. That rather than, Charles, your suggestion of going back and bringing our comments like we did for the 8-cap, I think in this case we're going to do a little bit more kind of markup and like a little more work than looking at something that was already done, polished, and just providing feedback. So one option I'd like to consider then is we could, not at this meeting, but in the future we could make a subcommittee on this topic so that some of us could discuss this more freely and come with edits and then just make updates to the whole commission and get feedback at that point and do further edits and such. So subcommittee is one option for this topic. So the next point is I'm in favor of removing the bonuses. I think that would be a good start to at least take a look at. And then again, the two big things I want to get out of this are removing the balcony outdoor space, for R2 and R1 and probably R3. I really think that would help force the middle units to be smaller to be able to accommodate a yard for those lots. So, and then the third thing is just a public open space. I agree with Chair Elder that, we want to encourage, running trails or some other kind of active use, but just from what we're seeing come through, that's just not what, a 20-foot wide thing between buildings is used for. So, I would consider like some much bigger minimum to qualify for open space, or giving bonuses or some other decrement if it's an active use versus non-active use open space on the public project. So again, those are the three things I'm looking for out of this topic. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And yeah, there's great ideas coming out of everyone. So this is perfect. Commissioner Stutzenberg, apologize if I got the order wrong. Sorry.
No problem. I want to thank Mr. Bernard for coming and speaking on that too. That property is one that stood out in my mind, as well as the 5 units that we recently approved on Prospect. Those were 2 instances that just seemed like our hands were just tied by things like this. And that's kind of what brought this about. I think, Chantel, I see you shaking your head. There may be others, but if commissioners still have those packages to go back and look at, those were good reference ones to see what could we have done there how would we have changed the code for those to make those work better with what we were looking for versus what the code was in existing format. Question for staff, what's the downside of reducing or eliminating the bonuses? What are we not seeing here? Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to cut into the, allowable square footage of the structure.
Oh.
Yes, right. The developers are going to be so.
Well, that alone, we shouldn't discuss it, I guess.
And one thing to consider is, when you talk about that usable space, the 5 by 10 not being, really something that's usable. Yet when Sean did the presentation, he pointed out like the roof decks. So I don't know if there's something that, because those have to have like this larger size that can have more usability to it, but then it's counted at a very discounted rate. So that's just something else to keep in there. It's like, what are you looking for and how do they provide that? Because that's something that they can structurally provide. Balconies, what's the depth that they could actually get structurally and not have to have other supports that now go out into other space. So just things to think about. That's the only thing I could think of as far as, like where there's a limitation or an issue would be just structurally what they could do with a balcony depth-wise. But that's where you might want to take into consideration giving the full credit for a roof deck instead. I don't. It's up to you. There could be other issues with that. But other than that, nothing that I can see as to why. Who knows what the lobbying was at the time when it was presented, and that was maybe, who knows if that was a compromise. I have no idea where they came up with having some kind of bonus for that space.
Yeah, it seems like the roof decks, to me, that's kind of self-explanatory that everybody wants those. So they're not going to minimize those. The ones they want to minimize are the balcony ones and the ground ones that takes up the footprint of the building because they want the bigger buildings. Those are the ones they're going to try to slim down as much as they possibly can. But roof decks, yeah, I would fully support the way it is now, or maybe even more stringent, that roof decks don't count for much. You want to do them anyway. We're trying to find some other things to do here. And we don't have a footprint restriction as far as like a percentage of lot that the footprint of the building could be. And I would take that even further, not just for example, the ground contact footprint, but a projected footprint of a floor above, because it could cantilever over, and it does in many cases. But we don't have anything like that, do we? And is that something, what's the downside of trying to put something like that in?
We don't have it currently. We do have, the FAR, floor area ratio, but just for the R1, not for the R2, not for the R3, not for the other multifamily zoning designation. So,
it seems like what we see for anything above R1 is they push it out to the absolute max of the setbacks and minimize the spaces that they can everywhere else, because they want that maximum interior floor area, because that's what sets the price, along with the roof deck. Okay. I think we're all kind of headed in the same direction. I think we do need to come back. I'm not comfortable trying to do it tonight, because I think there's some real thought that needs to be put in and review of the actual code, because that's what we would be doing here. Is we don't want to send forth nebulous ideas. We could do that, but that's not a great thing to do. We'd want to say, under this code, we recommend that this number or this become this, or we add this restriction or add this clarification type of thing. I'll stop there.
So I would agree with Commissioner Strutzenberg that this is something, tweaking this is something that's going to have incredible impact. So I don't think this is going to be, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a single hearing topic. We should have some more careful thought. So I do like the idea of coming back and giving everyone a chance to, these are my list of 10 recommendations, and this is what I would tweak in this session, or something at that level. But, I'm open to other suggestions too, if people want to form subcommittees. So I think kind of on this one, everyone should really get their thoughts and feedback and work with staff in advance of the meeting and formulate some ideas that we can discuss and go through.
Yeah, if the rec and parks can get dogs allowed into half the parks in the city, we should be able to do something like this.
Sorry, Commissioner Hensley, did you have your hand up?
I just want to make one more comment. Sean, can I see in the presentation the 3 on the lot picture that you showed? And while we pulled that up, I will say that the Recreation and Parks Commission did have a subcommittee on dogs in parks. Slide 4. Yeah, so I think this is kind of a.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. This is kind of a standard, and when we saw that one on Prospect Avenue before, it was basically 5 of these. But for Unit A and Unit B, if we didn't allow patios to count for the outdoor space requirement, it would force them, I think, to put it on the ground level there and shrink the units, because you have to have a driveway down one side, so you have to put the open space on the other. If you didn't allow those units to have to meet the requirement with only a patio. So yeah, that's why I think that for these kinds of units, the back unit's easy, and even the front unit, I think the front yard would count. I'm not sure why it doesn't in this picture, but
it doesn't. It doesn't count.
Because it's a setback.
Yeah, the front yard.
Okay. But the rear setback counts?
The rear setback can. That's private. Private versus the front yard, which is not.
Okay, but especially for the middle units, which is the one we see with the, I call them appendages, with the balconies hanging off the side, cantilevered over something. We took that away as being able to meet the outdoor space requirement for Unit B, then they would have to put it on the ground floor and shrink Unit B to meet it. So we wouldn't have changed the number, we wouldn't have changed much about that, but just if you're not a condo that has to have a patio or and then you have to provide some sort of outdoor space. And I think we can give bonuses for green versus hardscape, or something that would incentivize, or just count hardscape outdoor space versus some sort of green thing. So Anyway, that's why I'm really interested in changing the patio language, because right now, patio can mean R1, R1A, R2, R3, and the high density zoning requirements. So anyway, so I'd like to do something. So what does, if I could hear from the other commissioners, what do we want to do here? I think we're all rowing in the same direction, but how do we take action? Not tonight, but just, how do we move this forward? How do we move this forward?
Commissioner Topero.
I'd like to ask if staff can get back to us with some comparison of other cities, like I'd mentioned earlier, so that we can see where we stand compared to other California cities, which might be, the cities that I mentioned earlier all are very desirable cities to be living in with nice green space. And so what is it that's working for them, which we don't have? So I was thinking that might be a good way for us to really look, compare what the different cities are doing. It's no point in comparing cities next to us because Hermosa is all maxed out. Manhattan Beach is getting all maxed out. PV is a whole other enchilada. So we can't compare to that. So I think we need to go further afield. And that's why I mentioned the cities that I did mention.
Yeah, I think that, Sean did touch on the point of how our lots that are the R2s, the R3s used to be R1 zoning. So, now it's putting more units on the same smaller lot. That some of these other municipalities may not have that kind of density on their lots. That being said, that doesn't mean that we couldn't pull up what ordinances are out there from some of these municipalities you mentioned. I just can't say that they're going to even necessarily have that requirement because they may just within their setbacks meet it. Because it's, single family or, not as dense or larger lots for the multifamily.
Well, we need to look at cities that have, other things than R1 and see how they're dealing with it. What was I going to say? Just one thing I just want to share with the commission. It was a few years back and, I live on a really, really, really nice street of Redondo Beach, one of the best, if I can even say that. And just down the ways, I was just bicycling off to go do my grocery shopping. And there on the driveway of this big FQM was two miserable little beach chairs. And I will never forget that view. I thought, here these people have bought this millions-dollar home and they've got their beach chairs on their garage driveway because they've overbuilt the land, and this is what we're seeing in R1 and down the line to R2 and everything else. It's just a trend going forward, and I think it's time to really try to put a stop on that. I think most of the damage started in the 60s when it was build and bust kind of a thing. Let's make a lot of money. Let's, divvy up the land. And this is the remnants of that. And it's time to turn over a new leaf. So I'm talking about not just the R1 and I don't know if there's anybody who could guide us to cities which have better ordinances that we could model off of. But I think that is one way to start it. So this is the thing I wanted to, we have the ADUs now, right? And this has been forced onto us. And unfortunately, everybody's bowing down to it and nobody's fighting it. I recommended that we should sue the state for forcing this on us, but obviously that was not very well received. So here we are bending backwards to comply with all this ADU stuff, and we're going to get screwed even more with those things. So I think this is a really important time to put a stop to all this and take a break and redefine these parameters for the 21st century. You know, everything, this is a whole period of change now, and it means opportunity. And so let's grab it and do things right for once, because I think what we've learned from this pandemic is that, you know, everything has been rewritten, rescribed everything. So this is a perfect opportunity to do this.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Godek.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank the staff for the presentation. That was indeed very informative for the newbie over here. And you guys clearly have been doing this for a while, because everybody really knows what they're talking about here. I definitely, if you couldn't tell by all the nodding I've been doing, I'm in concurrence with pretty much everything that has been said by the fellow commissioners. Yeah, I'm in one of those 1920s era houses, little beach cottages, and I have way more yard than house. And every time people come over, like, the yard is the thing that they love the most about my place, like, never fails. And it's not because my yard is super fancy, it's because most of them don't have yards of their own. So yeah, I think we're on the right path with this discussion, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm pretty sure the answer to this question is no. And the answer is probably because of RENA, but is GPAC looking at down zoning any of these R2 areas that used to be R1? Yeah, I didn't think they could do everything else, but I just wanted to ask.
You did a very good job of answering your own question.
You did a very good job.
Yeah, unfortunately knew the answer, but wanted to see, you know, I'm always the optimist. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Elder. So looking at the residential guidelines, how does, my understanding of how that ties in is some of the guidelines are actually codified and can be enforced, but other parts of it just remain truly guidelines. Is that a correct summary of it? And is it useful for us to go in and review the residential guidelines as part of what we're looking for here? No.
I'll be the bearer of bad news. With SB 330 that was adopted and went into effect in January, any design guidelines have to be anything that was already adopted, and I think it was prior to 2018. Residential design guidelines included have to be objective. So anything that was prior to that, if it has subjective determinations, then it can remain. But any amendment that we would make to that, the whole thing would have to become be updated. And we are going to be updating it, and we will be updating it to be objective. But to make a tweak here or there is going to probably make the whole thing not effective, just because there's so much in there that's subjective at this point.
The residential guidelines you're talking about.
Yeah.
The codified portions of it, because I know some of it was actually codified, and there's a summary. This is back in 2003. That remains as long as we're not overruled by state somehow. But
yeah, if it's in the ordinance itself, that's if it's in the ordinance itself. But any design guidelines would have to be objective, and it would mean everything else has to come up to that state.
Guidelines may be still useful as a reference document for us for ideas and things, but it was whatever we decide would have to be codified.
Yeah, I think whatever you're looking to do, I think you're looking at changing the code. You'll want to change the code.
We definitely want it in the code. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a guideline, and a guideline it's barely a carrot. It's definitely not a stick. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to see that my understanding of that was correct. It sounds like it was. So the code is the key thing that we need to focus on. How would we potentially amend or recommend to amend the code?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Topero.
My favorite topic. The guidelines, that's just a little decoration. I mean, you know, it's it's the code. It's what's enforceable, what is enforceable. So I say we go for the jugular and only the jugular. And, you know, the guidelines are all very nice and pretty, but it's got to be the code. And, you know, maybe we need more enforcement in the city because obviously I don't know why there's an echo. With the resident that came, Lisa Agabian, you know, stuff is going on which is not being enforced. And I've seen other stuff that's going on which is also not enforced. So I think we're lacking in enforcement. You know, maybe we're just, you know, maybe they get a little wrist slap or something. And so that might be a source of revenue for the city is part of, you know, enforcing the law, which is not pleasant, but I'd rather go, you know, with rewriting things so that it is more reasonable and, you know, depending on staff and availability for enforcement, then maybe that's something we need to start doing a little bit more carefully.
Well, the enforcement would happen in plant check, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, there's stuff going on, and you know, it's with other properties next to places that are being, and nothing's being said. I mean, and
Yeah, I don't want to go into the particular details of that case because it's not something that's agendized.
Right.
However,
as an example, that
yeah. So what I was going to say is, our code enforcement is something that it's when we get a report. So it's not that we're actively going out and looking at everybody's property and checking plans to see did they change something from what was built 20 years ago. So it really does come from what the member of the public mentioned, which is you know, somebody letting us know, hey, somebody's doing something. That being said, we do have to make sure that something does comply with building codes. So even if it was something that was constructed and they had to come back in and get a permit, they still have to demonstrate. They will have to go through any process of demonstrating how they meet the building code. So we are very, very strict on that, but it's not always that we know what's happening in somebody's backyard. If you can't see it at the street, we can't go around walking and looking at people's side yards, backyards. It really does come down to the complaint-based system. And there's the level of staffing. I mean, that is what it is.
Thank you. So I think we've got consensus that we want to move forward on this, and we have a lot of ideas. So the question is how. So just as a nod of heads, do people want to continue this hearing to our next meeting? Raise your hand or nod your head. So we can continue this. And so then the question then is, would you prefer to do this like ACAP, where we all come back with their own suggestions and we talk with staff beforehand or come back? Commissioner Hensley had suggested forming a subcommittee. There's no reason we can't do that informally too. We can each have a Brown Act buddy and form our own some committees. But so what's the preference there? Anyone have an idea of how they want to do this? Do you want to do it like ACAP? Would you want to form a subcommittee? How do we want to do this?
I'd like to be able to see what other cities are doing and be able to compare, because these are things that are working for other cities. So that to me is a good baseline to start to evaluate how we can evaluate from where we are to what's working in California.
Okay, so your suggestion. Sorry, Commissioner Hensley.
I'm sorry, just really quick. I just wanted to say my concern is if we make a referral to staff to come back with other cities' ordinances, it took us a year to get this on the agenda. So it's going to take a really long time to get that referral back. So I'm not opposed to looking at other cities' ordinances, but
And maybe if I may, refer some of the earlier statements I made. I think we'll have apples and apples comparisons with R1 zoning, I think, and that's something, that's kind of one animal, if you will. And there's a lot of and there's still, it sounds like an issue with outdoor living space in the R1 zone. But there is an FAR for the R1 zone, and there's, the setbacks, and it's just single unit on a single lot. But certainly, yeah, that's kind of an apples and apples comparison we can get from other jurisdictions. I think with our R2 and R3 lots being essentially R1 lots, I'm not sure we're going to find a whole lot out there. We'll certainly look, but I think that's, I don't know, I don't know of a lot of jurisdictions that have R1 subdivisions that are zoned R2 and R3, and that are going to have, with R2 and R3 densities. And we're kind of unique in both having an outdoor living space requirement and also just the condition that's driving that we even have it, if I'm making sense. So, for the R2 and R3, which is, I think, where the commission is really, expressing a desire to get at more usable open space, and I could be wrong, rather than the R1. So just, looking outside, I think we'll really find stuff on R1 lots, but R2 and R3, I don't know if we're going to have, as much luck mining outdoor living space requirement. But there could be other types of ways that they get at it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. A lot of cities, actually, their municipal code's pretty easy to find and search through for things like outdoor living space or open space or whatnot. That's where I was looking at Torrance and Santa Barbara and some other cities. But the apples to apples comparison with some of the things we've done has got a little bit trickier. So I do love having staff do all the homework for us, but we can certainly also do it ourselves too. It's all on the internet. Or most of it is anyway.
Sarah, your mic is really.
Anyone else have any suggestions?
Sarah, your mic is really breaking up.
Oh. Sorry. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So does anyone else have any suggestions for Adam?
You just went dead, I believe, Dan.
Uh-oh. Can anyone hear me now?
There, you're back now.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. 2020. So how do we want to proceed with this? Do we want to just make our own recommendations at the next hearing and go through them like we did with ACAP?
My question on that is, I believe we have to agendize this to be able to discuss it. But what would we agendize? Can we agendize something and just have it basically be open without a staff? We could have a staff report on other cities as has been suggested, but can we just agendize it?
You can have the same thing that you have here. The only reason we did a presentation is because we wanted to make sure you had the information to make your decision or your recommendation to what you want. We could, it could be that it's a discussion and present, it's because you're discussing it, and maybe we could put it as a potential recommendation to city council regarding the city's policies related to open space and outdoor living space.
So we could agendize it as an item to formalize recommendations to city council concerning open space and outdoor living space changes.
If you wanted to make that motion and have somebody second it, we'll do, because it's continuing this item but changing the title of it. So you're already in the middle of this discussion. People have been noticed that you're having this conversation. So so you could either do it here or you could do it at referrals.
Okay, so yeah, I think the thing tonight that we looked to accomplish was kind of get an overview of where we're at. Now we have that documentation. We have the relevant codes in one compact area. We can always go to the full code if we need to. So this is a great start. It's up to us now to go through this individually, I think similar to what we did with the ACAP, and come back and maybe on the next month's meeting, if we, it depends on, I don't want to do it on a night where we've got a full agenda anyway, but if we've got
I would say at the next meeting. And I say that because we are going to probably have maybe one more, one or two more things, but we're trying to get it on one or the other. So we're not like, here's one thing on this agenda and they're not big items. So I don't want to say bring it to the November meeting and then say, oh, we didn't have anything else for November, but December is when we could have this. Does that make sense? So I would just say bring it to the next planning committee. You can always carry it at that point if you feel the agenda is too large.
Yeah, and I'd like to get it on as soon as we can. The next agenda is fine with me. That gives us more than enough time, a month, to go through this, similar to how we did with the ACAP, and come up with some things. This wasn't a public hearing. Do we continue this? We just make a referral staff to agendize.
Would make it a referral to staff to agendize it so that you're agendizing the, discussion and recommendations of the city of changes to the city's policies related to open space and outdoor living space.
Okay, I'm going to give that a shot. Then I'm going to say I make a motion to at the next possible planning commission meeting, if that's next month, that's great, to agendize a further discussion regarding open space and outdoor space for residential. I think residential only at this point, residential areas, for possible recommendations to city council.
I'll second that. I mean, I would like to do a friendly. I would like to do a friendly to see what we can dig up on R2 or 3, as well.
But all
I think that'd be covered by residential. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant just R1, but okay, yeah. So I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Schutzenberg, that motion wouldn't include the commercial zones that require public open space.
I think we come back and deal with that separately. I did not include that. I think this is the first one for us to kind of cut our teeth on, and then once we've done this one, because we don't have commercial space in the report of this one. This is that
in the staff report?
Yeah, we've only got, just to clarify, for usable public open space, we have that in our coastal commercial, which is just down in the waterfront area, and then we have it also in our mixed-use residential zone. And the reasons with the Galleria is because it's also in the CR zone. So that's the only place we have the requirement currently for the usable public open space versus outdoor living space. Outdoor living space is residential, usable public open spaces is just those limited areas I just mentioned.
Okay, yeah, and with respect to what Commissioner Hinsey, I appreciate that. I did specifically not include those areas in my motion. I think we need to focus in first, a little bit better spotlight, and then rather than an entire floodlight, and then we can just do another spotlight after that. So I would restrict it to the residential, the R designated areas.
Okay, understood.
I'm not against it all what you said. I'm not against it all what you said. Maybe do that at the next step.
Sorry, and just a question for staff. Can we make that referral now, or do we have to wait for the commission items and referrals to staff?
I think you could make it now because it's related to this discussion item.
Perfect. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I did.
Oh, sorry. Motion by Commissioners.
To clarify, included in that was the report back from staff concerning other cities or not? Was that Commissioner Toprob? Did you want that in there?
Yeah, I would like that in there.
Is that possible, staff, by next meeting?
We'll see what we can provide you.
Yeah.
You can make you can make that request.
Okay. All right.
We may not have a large.
Yeah, and sorry, and I would also chime in with trying to keep it to the next meeting because we don't always have a December meeting. So we have a motion by Commissioner Strutzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Capro. Do you mind restating the motion?
I don't know if I could. To bring back for further discussion on open space and outdoor living space for the R designated residential areas. And with that, to the extent possible, report back from staff on other relevant cities similar to ours, the code of other cities relevant to our city size and type of city that might apply to this.
We have recommendations to City Council of revisions to the code.
Yeah, that's, yes, to add that to the end of that, that would be the intent, but for possible recommendation to City Council for amendments to the existing municipal code. And then with that, we all know it's coming, so we've got this month to put together our ideas. Do we want to try to get those to staff prior to the meeting so we can, like we did with the ACAP?
Yeah, we can certainly provide that.
So
I would encourage everyone to talk with staff in advance.
Or just provide, like, you know, if you, like, I think you guys each provided something in writing, because I don't want to misinterpret something that somebody's considering.
that's kind of what I was thinking, is a written, and then Lena, I believe you had put out a request for that several days, but the day you needed it to get it included in the agenda. So that's the route I would look for us to take with this one. Very similar to the ACAP.
Did we take a vote on that?
No, not yet. Sorry, I was having him restate the motion so I wouldn't have to. So I will do a roll call vote, though. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So yeah, this is a topic we've been anxious to get after for a long time here. We're making some progress. So please, everyone, get your thoughts and take a look at other cities' municipal codes, take a look at ours, and put together a list of things you want to change, and we'll see what consensus we can reach next time. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Just ask one more thing. If staff could email that presentation to us, just as another reference document, that would be great.
Sure, we'll get that out.
Motion to receive and file.
Is that what we need for that?
To receive and file that presentation.
Sure.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. That now takes us to item L2, election of chairperson and secretary for the term of October 2020 through September 2021. Would anyone like to nominate themselves or someone else?
I'd like to nominate Dan for continuing as chair. Doing such a fine job.
Are there any other? You just want to beat up on me in the Zoom controls. I'm terrible at these.
I second that nomination. I thought that was a good idea. If you're tuned into it, you've been doing a great job. If you're okay with it.
Thank you. No, I will accept the nomination. There was a little bit of a learning curve, but I've got the Alt-A down really fast now. Are there any other nominees for the position of chair?
I wanted to ask Commissioner Tupper if he had interest in being the vice chair or secretary.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, sure. And I'll nominate Commissioner Tupper to be the secretary.
So should we do a vote on chair first? So are there any other nominees for the position of chair? Then we will do a roll call vote. The motion is for me to be chair for coming year. Commissioner
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes, and thank you for all the Zooming you do.
thank you all. Commissioner Topero,
Yes, I chaired for 8 years. Really, really.
excellent.
Good job.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Stutzenberg,
Yes.
thank you, sir. And I will also vote yes, so you're now stuck with me trying to manage Zoom meetings again. Hopefully we'll get to do this in person at some point and I can bring brownies again. That brings us to the position of secretary. There is a motion to, Commissioner Topero has been nominated. Are there any other nominees? Going once, going twice. All right, this is a roll call vote for Commissioner Topero as secretary.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry if I may, was there a second? I just want, I didn't make note of who the second was.
I'll second.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
So you actually don't need a second to nominate.
No? No?
No, it's one of the few motions that doesn't need a second.
Oh, got it. Okay. Oh, got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So someone did read Robert's Rules of Orders. Just to confirm, I'm supposed to offer the nomination position 3 times and then I can close it. Is that correct? I think that's what I saw as well, but that gets a little arcane. So going once, going twice, 3 times. Roll call vote for Commissioner Topero as secretary. Commissioner
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero, Commissioner Godek,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. We have made it through L2. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry that you're stuck with me again for another year, but we'll get through this together. This takes us to items from staff. Staff have any other items for us?
The one thing I did want to give you an update on when I mentioned something's going to come to you, but I don't know when yet. The ADU ordinance is going to come back to you. And it's not because city council made any changes. We received the Department of Housing and Community Development's comments. There are a few changes that we have to make for it to be compliant with the state regulations and not be deemed null and void. So technically, because those are substantive changes, they'll come back to you for making that referral. I mean, it's more of the same. It's not anything exciting as far as, oh, wait, we all of a sudden got to do something we didn't think we could. But I just wanted to make you aware that that's going to be coming back. I'm just not sure if it'll be at the November or the December meeting, because we'll want to run those edits by HCD to make sure that they are in line with what they were asking. So there's a little bit of timing to see if we'll be able to get that and get the public hearing notice. So expect that on one of the, your next meeting.
Thank you. Commission items and referrals to staff. Does anyone have any commission items or referrals to staff? I believe, sorry, I see Commissioner Strutzenberg. Commissioner Topero, you had one earlier in the meeting you'd made. Did you want to, based on the feedback from the public participation?
Oh, right, yes. The issue that was brought up by resident Agabian. If we could look into that. I'm not sure exactly how we can facilitate this. It seems like it's more of an enforcement issue, no?
No, I think her concern was what are the appurtenances that are allowed in rear yard or in yards. So it may be bringing that back in the same way that, for discussion for, similar to what you've just done with open space, because you're going to need to look at what is allowed,
right,
you think should or shouldn't be allowed as appurtenances.
So you're saying that this is sort of like a subset of what we're bringing back?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay. All right, so then that will take care of that. I do have something else.
With that, with referrals, we'll want to make sure that we have, because you all have to agree that you're making that referral. So your request is to bring back a discussion item on the appurtenances.
Accessory structure, I think.
Was auxiliary structures and tree
Auxiliary structure,
preservation, I
thank
believe.
you.
We actually call them accessory structures in the municipal code.
Okay, so I will make that recommendation, and you say we need to vote on it then?
Well, you need a second. So that'd be your motion, and then
Okay.
a second.
We have a motion to bring back the discussion of accessory structures, or haven't agendized the discussion of accessory structures and tree preservation. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking for, Commissioner
it would
Topro?
be private trees. I remember when it was on Parks and Rec, we addressed open space trees, public trees, but public trees.
Perfect. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it, but I'd like to know by when it'll come back. It'll come back.
I
It'll
would say
probably
that-
show up on.
I was going to say that it'll be, in the first of the year.
Staff's discretion.
Just, realistically, what we've got from now until the end of the year, and especially if we only end up having one meeting. That being said, I think it'd be similar where we would just do what we did here, where we can pull out that code section. And then just do a brief presentation so that you understand what's in there, and then you can have the discussion. So it probably, I would say, February might be more realistic, because if we do, there may be some things that will build up in January. It'll probably be pretty full.
I'm good with that. Okay, yeah, so just make sure the motion is clear then by February, and the rest of the motion,
We have a motion and a second. Do we need a vote, or is that all we need for referral?
We need to vote.
Yeah, you'll need to vote on.
Okay. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero,
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. Commissioner Strutzenberg, did you have a referral for staff or a commission item?
I was actually just a clarification on the ADU. Randy, does that mean if it's coming back to us, does it then have to go back to city council again?
Yeah, so technically, anything that's land use has to be considered. Any amendments have to be considered by planning commission for their recommendation to the city council, and then they have to, regardless, city council would have to reintroduce it. But because it's land use related, the planning commission does have to, because it's substantive change. It's just something where
we may or may not get it in place before the end of the year. In fact, we probably won't get it in place before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then the coastal would still be after that again.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got the ordinances to HCD on February. We got it on September 3rd. And we just got their comments back on Monday.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
They knew when we were going to, they knew that it was going to planning commission. They knew when it was city council hearing. I don't know if they're just overwhelmed or why they didn't get comments back before that, but that's when we got them.
Okay. That's why my hand was up earlier, was just to clarify and understand that, because it is going to be several months again now. And who knows what Sacramento.
But that's why we're already working on those changes so that we can get it to you as quickly as we can.
Okay. That was it. Thank you.
Commissioner Ung.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the non-agendized item. It wasn't clear whether, not that it needs to be a referral to staff, but it sounded like there could have been a possible code, violation, or just a need for understanding of what they're able to do versus what is being done. And I just wanted to clarify that that the speaker has the, always has the right to go to code enforcement, right? If they feel that there is a possible code violation. I just want to make sure that not necessarily that they are, not doing what they're allowed to do, but in the event that they aren't, that there's a means for addressing it.
Yeah, so if somebody isn't sure if something was allowed, or if somebody got a permit, or they think something wasn't supposed to happen a certain way, they can submit. We do check the voicemails. We do have an email. We do have our Comcate system. There's a complaint system online. So there are many opportunities. And as well, we've had people who contact their city council person and it ends up getting to code enforcement. And then code enforcement does the investigation of that. There are times where somebody can come into compliance. If they don't come into compliance, it depends on what that violation is and where it's at in the code, on whether or not you can do fine-based, or you have to give, and the problem is you have to give it's not like, oh, I'm giving you a ticket. The places where we can give tickets is, leaf blower, for example. If there's a leaf blower violation, you give it to them at that moment. But when it comes to, other violations, it's having to issue different notices. And eventually you get to a point where you have enough documentation that they're not bringing it into compliance, they're not trying to comply, and we can take it to prosecution. There's a whole, it all depends on what we have such a wide range of things that we get complaints on. So with that, and ultimately, we want to see compliance. We've had some where it might be somebody who's got difficulties keeping their yard up. And, so they have weeds and it's overgrown, and maybe they have a few extra trash items and such in their property, and they have a more difficult time cleaning that. So what we will end up doing is trying to work with them, see if they're making progress, keep working with them if they are making that progress. And then we also have some organizations that we've encountered who will help some, in certain circumstances, they can help people to do some of that cleanup. And we've had a couple of cases where we were able to close the case because they just needed the extra hands. They needed the extra help. So it's a wide range of what code enforcement does. But if somebody is submitting something to us, it's not ignored. We definitely are going to address it. It may just be addressed in a way, depending on what that violation or issue is.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because, it's, oftentimes City Hall is confusing for citizens. And if we can help them understand what options are available, then, we're here to make sure things are right.
And if something comes into, like our main email address for planning is planningredondo@redondo.org. And so if somebody isn't quite sure, do I send it here? Where do I go with it? That's one option. And that will end up going. Lena will see those. She'll make sure that it gets to code enforcement. If it came to me, if I got that email, I make sure that it goes to code enforcement. If it's, something that goes to building, and building's like, well, this isn't really ours, but we want to make sure that it gets addressed, we always are making sure that it gets to code enforcement for them to do that evaluation.
Okay, great. Yeah, I see Lisa is still, she's still participating on our Zoom meeting. So, if you've heard that, if you feel that you want to raise it further, that there are people, in code enforcement that are willing to help, and there's mechanisms online to lodge any concerns or complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just had a few quick ones. Commissioner Tupperell.
Yes, I have a very happy, sweet referral that I want to share with everybody is that this past Saturday and Sunday, we installed the surfing mosaic at the police station wall. So this was an effort. As you know, I chaired the public art. Well, we started the art commission from zero, the public art, and I chaired it for 8 years. And I was going to the meetings after because it was like my baby, right? So even after I stepped down from my 8 years, I was still going to the meetings. And one of the police staff, Maria Temprano, was proposing this project because she knew the artists, Debbie Collette and Patty Lynette, who are mosaic artists, and they've done the ocean steps over by the pier, the bollards by the beach, and then also on Harbor Drive, those beautiful mosaic outlines that you see between the little aquarium and the Spectrum Club. They did those mosaics. And anyway, it was for this project. And after 2 years of efforts and fundraising, and I want to personally thank Commissioner Ung for being one of our donors for the project. We fundraised. Part of the money came from the Public Art Commission, and part of the money was fundraising through donor bricks. And so when you go around the wall, there's a wall with the donor bricks of that effort. And anyway, it's a beautiful project. I can't wait to do another project like that. As president of the Friends of Redondo Beach Arts, I'm always looking for projects that we can do through the organization, working with the city. So anyway, the mural just is over the top fabulous. I mean, please go and have a look at it and enjoy it. And as you're driving by on PCH, you can just see it. It's just absolutely magnificent. So anyway,
Great,
happy times. Happy times.
Terrific project. Thank you. So I just had a few quick things. First one, and probably the biggest one, is that Commissioner Rodriguez is not here tonight because he's termed out. I just wanted to thank him for his many, many years of service and guidance on the Planning Commission. He brought a wealth of institutional knowledge, so he will be dearly missed. But thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez, for all your service, both on Planning Commission and on everything else you've done in the city. And also wanted to encourage everyone, please make sure you were counted in the census. That is winding down quickly, and that controls a lot of funding and representation. So if you haven't been counted yet, please make sure you do so. Any other commission? Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yeah, I wanted to do a real thank you to Brandy and Stacy and your staff for what you did with the appeal that was before us tonight. Looking through that was a difficult and unfortunate situation, and you turned it into a win-win, and that is greatly appreciated. I fully support what you did there, and I think it was a great solution to a difficult and unfortunate and almost somewhat unusual situation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I know that you were in on that a lot, and it was a lot of work, but in the end, I think everybody came out happy.
Thank you.
And that's what we love to see. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. No, great point, and thank you for bringing that up. Staff is always amazing, so always appreciate all the hard work that goes into everything. With that, though, if there's no other items, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Strutzenberg to adjourn the meeting. One last roll call for the night. Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes, unbelievably at 9:19 p.m.
Right, it's the most decent hour we've gotten out in a while, and I will also vote yes. So thank you all. This was a great discussion tonight, and I look forward to continuing it in the future. everyone stay safe and healthy, and I will see you at